June 1998, on a beautiful Saturday morning at 8 a.m., I pulled into the parking lot of the pharmacy where I was working as the relief pharmacist for the day. Immediately, I noticed several cars in the parking lot. Oh, it made me nervous. For a moment, I thought, oh my God, I must be late. I wasn't. 45 minutes later, after prepping shop and opening the doors, first patient walks in, steps up to the counter, hands me a script for OxyContin. Second patient follows, hands me a script for OxyContin. Third patient walks up and hands me a script for OxyContin. For the last decade, we have been in the midst of the worst drug epidemic in American history, worse than the heroin epidemic of the 70s, the AIDS epidemic of the 80s, and the crack cocaine epidemic of the 90s. I'm speaking about the opioid or prescription painkiller epidemic. For the first time ever, drug overdoses are the #1 cause of death in Americans under 50. Under 50, you're in your prime. And by the time I'm done speaking today, 1 person will have died. Yes, every 15 minutes we lose a life due to an opioid overdose. And by the same time tomorrow, 24 hours from now, 96 people will have died. With these odds, it's likely in your proximity. Is it your brother, your child, your neighbor, your best friend? It could even be you. And if you don't believe that you're being touched by it, you will be. Guaranteed, this is just like cancer, it's touching all of us. Here's why this is important to me. I play many roles: mother of 5, leadership results coach, clinical pharmacist. Before graduating, I was selected for a prestigious internship for a pharmaceutical company. It gave me a rare advantage, an insider's view. And after graduating from USC, go Trojans, with a Doctor of Pharmacy degree, followed by a clinical residency, I accepted a position as a clinical pharmacist in a hospital. But I also chose to work weekends, retail, to experience that side of pharmacy. And back in the 90s, we pharmacists, myself included, were filling OxyContin and Vicodin pills like candy. Without any red flags, it was the norm. In fact, we would have a large stock bottle right in front of us on the counter for fast-moving refills. And our actions were saying, it's not even worth taking the time and turning around and putting that bottle back on the shelf. The volume was that high. But what brings me here to you today is for the last 2 years, I have been hanging out in prisons. It started with a letter from an inmate humbly requesting 1 public speaking manual and a club sponsor. I promptly replied to the letter, invited a group of friends to join me, and on the day that we showed up, having never been in a prison before, and after clearing security, we walked into a large room full of men, and we were met with a standing ovation. So I am now, my newest role is I'm a mentor for prisoners in the Florida Department of Corrections. I'm behind bars 6 days a week. And it's what I learned behind those bars, the deeper personal stories and problems that caused me to want to engage you to go to the source. Consider this metaphor. One summer, you and a group of friends are enjoying a picnic. You notice a baby in the river crying. Instinctively, you rush to save the baby. Then there's a second baby screaming, and you pull that baby out too. And now there are more and more babies coming down the river, and you and your friends are pulling them out as fast as you can. Exhausted, a few of you think, hey, we need to go upstream and stop whoever is throwing them in. If you want to make a difference, go to the source, go to the root cause, go upstream. But before we go upstream, let me take you on a journey downstream. And for that, we have to go way back to 1898, when heroin, an opioid, was considered a wonder drug. But as physicians started to become aware of the addictive nature of opioids and tried to avoid using them, what we see is by 1924, heroin is illegal. Let's fast forward to the 80s. The attitude begins to change. Why? One short article in a reputable journal is published regarding the non-addictive nature of opioids. And that fuels the epidemic. Everyone is referencing it. Let's move to the 90s. Pain management becomes a hot topic. And the addictive nature of opioids, they're downplayed, they're minimized. We also see this brilliant marketing campaign, and we pick up a fifth vital sign, pain. When you go to see a physician, they're going to check your blood pressure, your respiration rate, your pulse, your temperature. Well, now we added, what is your pain on a scale of 0 to 10? 0 should have never been a goal. It's not realistic. 1996, Purdue Pharma introduces OxyContin. And in 1 year, from 1995 to 1996, prescriptions jumped by 8 million. And for the next 10 years, we see the most aggressive marketing campaign, including videos for doctors' waiting rooms, ads in reputable journals, this huge marketing team. And as sales continue to skyrocket, stay with me. 2007, Purdue Pharma pleads guilty to criminal charges for misleading the government, the medical community, and the public regarding the risks of OxyContin addiction and abuse. They pay more than $600 million in penalties. Sounds like a lot of money. For most of us, it is. For the company, it was the cost of doing business. Annual revenues of more than $3 billion a year. 2015, enough opioids are prescribed for every adult in the country. And now, here we are, near the end of 2017, using today's modern lingo, hashtag Opioid Crisis. So let's move now and let's look at how we define addiction. Do you believe addiction is a lack of character or morals, or do you believe addiction is an illness? Let's take a look. We can look at her and say, loser, scumbag, druggie, go get a life. We need to be saying, deep pain, hopelessness, hurting. She needs help. Addiction means to be enslaved to. You're under the influence of a drug that causes you not to have the ability to care. Research shows that the neural pathways of the brain begin to change. We must begin to understand addiction as a brain illness and not a mental illness which stigmatizes the disease, just like we don't stigmatize cancer. And furthermore, addiction in itself is not a criminal act. The same cannot be said for those pharmaceutical companies that misled everyone that their drugs were safe. All the mentoring of incarcerated men and women has been a lesson to me. When they open up and they share their personal stories, that has been a lesson to me. And the theme is, consistently, it's a lack of love, a lack of connection, a lack of being valued. See, pain is real, and keeping legitimate pain away is a legitimate goal. But we have to understand that there are other ways to deal pain. And we can no longer be this pill will fix it society. And we must surrender this notion that we must live with a 0 level of pain. Here's what I'm saying. If I take my education as a pharmacist, my passion for leadership, and my mentoring of inmates, what is crystal clear is the opioid epidemic is a symptom of a much deeper epidemic. It's the pain beneath the pain. It's the pain of despair, loneliness, depression. It's the pain of lack of purpose, lack of faith, lack of love. This is emotional pain. It comes from devaluing humans. I received a note from a former inmate, and what he said to me was remarkable. This emotional pain cannot be relieved with a chemical substance. It takes human involvement. When a person is valued and surrounded by love, when he knows he's not alone, he is able to deal with his pain. Your love, your compassion, your concern saved me. So how do we go upstream? How do we go to the source? There are lots of great projects all across the country dealing with the opioid epidemic as a symptom, including prescription drug monitoring programs, medical-assisted treatment, community collaboration, and the list goes on. But what can we do to go upstream and stop the babies from being thrown in? I have come to believe that the answers are not in the medical journals, but in the leadership journals. We as a society rely too much on pills and not enough on people. Our human need of significance, love, and connection can never be met with chemicals. There is something wrong going on here. Simply focusing on opioids makes no sense. We not need to only cut the supply, we need to cut the demand. And for that, I would like to propose 3 simple action steps. A first step, it can be done today. Take your eyes off your screens and begin to build human connections. Where have we learned that? How often do we ignore people? A simple hello. A second step, let's begin to view addicts with empathy, not as a drain to society and an embarrassment to our community. And a third step, let's begin to spearhead a culture of caring, a focus on service and mentoring. I have a confession to make. Remember all those patients that waited nearly an hour to get their meds? I was one of those people without the empathy. The prisoners changed this pharmacist's mind on how to deal with this epidemic. And none of this can happen until we realize we are not different. We are the same. We need to let go of this culture of the instant and the culture of disinterest and the culture of strangers. This is preventable and treatable. We're not only looking for licensed professionals, we are looking for ordinary people who care. Everyday people who care. This is not a new message. It's a message that's not getting any airtime. Remember our metaphor. The river is the epidemic. The babies are the addicts. You and your friends, you're midstream. The solution can be found upstream. Upstream is to empathize, not stigmatize. Upstream is to humanize, not criminalize. And upstream is to build community, not apathy. We are the people that can save lives. Let's go upstream and stop the babies from being thrown in. Thank you.